welcome to the first of a series of virtual shows from Teak Boutique, including, of course, Wacky Lamps. We can't go out to do shows this year, we're all on the same boat at the moment, so we thought, why not give a chance for everybody to see our products and to ask questions by giving you a virtual show. Now, this is our kitchen at home, and we've cleared the decks, and we're going to build the stand that we would normally build at the shows. So bear with us, it's the first time we've done this, and you'll probably get various noises in the background, the washing machine, the phone ringing, the cats coming up and disturbing us. We're going to give it a go. We're going to put the stand up every weekend that we would have a show. So let's give you a sample of what we would have brought to that show and the rest of the shows this year. So there you are, we've got the whole of the stand set up here. As you can see, it didn't take us that long really. And all that's left now is to put the stock on the shelves. Well, that's it, we're all set up for the show. It looks pretty good to me, and one thing we're going to do before we get the show underway, get changed.
Yeah.
That's better.
Well, I wish it was that quick every day.
Well, we're ready now to start our show. Just to tell you once again, we're doing this as a virtual show because we obviously can't go out and do the wonderful shows around the country that we've got planned for this year. So we brought our stand to you via the wonderful technology of the internet. And we hope you're all at home watching this, staying safe, staying healthy, and enjoy the next few minutes. We'll give you a tour of what we've got. Steph's going to do a bit of needle felting.
Yep, as normal.
To show you, those of you that don't know an awful lot about needle felting.
Or those that do.
Or those that do and want a few extra techniques. I'm going to be telling, I'm getting quite hot here.
Yeah.
I'm going to be telling you about my lamps and how I got into doing the lamps. So they haven't quite let the doors open yet, let the crowds in, but you'll certainly hear when the crowds start arriving, I'm sure. So we'll get ourselves set up and we'll just carry on, and hopefully you'll find something you can comment on. Feel free, we are going to be available.
Yes,
to answer.
And in fact you can comment below because it's going to be up on YouTube. You can comment below there and we'll answer over the weekend, and if we need to come back on and do a little demo for you to answer your question, we will.
Social media queen here, she'll do all social media. I do the technology behind the scenes, social media. So anything you need to know, if you do fancy buying anything, then feel free, go onto our New Monday shops and you can purchase anything, or you might just want to ask some questions, get involved as much as you can and enjoy.
Drunk again.
Well, I'm going to start off explaining first of all. You probably noticed I'm now hand-holding the camera. We're going to start by explaining who we are, because you may have just found us on Facebook, found us on the YouTube, and we are actually Teak Boutique. That's the official name of our stand, and my lamping part of it is called Wacky Lamping. That's the word, lamping, isn't it? Yeah, lamping part of it is called Wacky Lamps. So, but I always exhibit with Steph as a partnership, and we are partners anyway. And during this lockdown period, we are working at home together like we always do. So it's really not been any great problem for us.
No, the only difference is we aren't packing up the trailer and coming out to a show to see everybody. So
yeah,
hence why we're here.
Yeah. So a little look around the stand first of all. You'll see this is how we normally set up our stand for our shows. We have these wonderful wooden boxes and a demonstration area for Steph there, who's demonstrating her needle felting, and we put my lamps in between all of the wonderful creations that Steph makes. So it all started off, didn't it, as you needle felting?
Yeah, and basically you wanted to come along.
Didn't want to be left out.
Didn't want to be left out. So you then decided we needed a bit of extra light on the stand, so you made some book lamps.
Yep, I'll zoom in on a book lamp. This is one of my
Very
first creations down there, was
Yep.
things like this, just to give some illumination to the stand, really.
Yeah. And then basically they got a life of their own because people obviously were interested in the lamps. And then you got more and more creative with your lamps. And now actually, you know, it is a part of your business as well as this is a part of mine. It's like an equal share of the stand now, rather than it just being mine, even though it obviously is still called Boutique. That's how
Yeah, I mean, we'll be hearing a little bit more about my lamps later on. I don't want to take the focus for the moment off Boutique Boutique, because Steph has been creating things for quite a number of years. You tried all sorts, haven't you?
Oh gosh, yes. Well, but the journey to here, I mean, I've done everything from Chinese brush painting to macrame and everything. But what the journey to here was, I started to repair teddy bears because I started selling vintage teddy bears, and then I went on a course with the wonderful Lainey Edwards up in Telford, and her teddy bear making courses, so that I could learn the techniques to repair. But I loved making the teddy bears so much, and hence the critters actually arrived.
These are the critters part of the stand. These aren't needle felt, are these?
So these are actually what they're teddy bears, but they're critters rather than bears.
So they're artisan, handmade bears,
Yes.
we can call them, don't we?
But a part of that, sometimes to do the details, we use needle felting. And then I think it was Michaela Bartlett, one of her foxes, which if you know anything about needle felting, you'll be very aware of her.
Oh, I know a lot about needle felting. Oh, a hell of a lot.
Yeah. I saw one of her foxes and thought, how on earth could that be made from wool? And so then I looked into it a bit more and started doing little brooches and things. And then actually I very first learned how to do the 3D through the Serafina website, and then lots of different tutorials following. And I still do workshops and tutorials and everything now, because I do believe that we have to progress and learn new techniques. And in fact, just recently, I was on a course with the fabulous Kiyoshi Mino, where I actually did the Kingfisher.
Oh, this is the pièce de résistance,
Yeah.
isn't it? This is the Kingfisher.
I learned how to do the Kingfisher with a great group we had, and it was at the Makers in Gloucestershire we went to, and it was brilliant, and we learned all the techniques. Obviously you don't manage to do it in the 3 days, but he teaches you everything you need to know so that you can go back and finish it, and that is where the Kingfisher came from.
Just to say that those of you struggling to write down all these things that Steph's saying, we will be putting little clips on the hopefully into the video or underneath the video, so you can actually
notes, and I can
links.
even of the places where I'm mentioning, so that you can actually look them up later. You say like the Makers and everything.
Yeah, because the hope is that those of you watching can get involved as well. You might fancy doing needle felting.
Well, yes, and say Kiyoshi, he's American, but he came over to the UK. It was just before the virus hit, so we managed to get. I think he managed to do about 3 courses. The other one that he was doing was of the tiger, but as I say, our group did the Kingfisher, but also, which is another one of Kiyoshi's patterns.
Wow.
Is the Mauritius kestrel, which if any of you follow...
Flew towards me quite quickly.
Yes.
I'll zoom out of him again.
If any of you follow Curious Mondo, that's where this actually sits. Now, he's not actually finished yet. I'm just going to take him off. It doesn't hurt. Because underneath, I've still got to put all the fluff and the little black dots all the way up here.
Wow.
I will also, because it's a Mauritius kestrel, they used to love little geckos, not to play with, obviously to eat. And so he's going to be clutching a little gecko in his talons.
So very much as he would do in the wild of the Mauritius.
So that is 300 feathers.
Dun, dun, dun. Wow, that is a... Yeah, I'm saying wow. I've sat next to you on the sofa and watched you stab 300 feathers.
Well, because...
I thought, how the hell aren't you going out of your mind?
Well, and I know that Kiyoshi is someone very much who actually does a project from start to end. I'm not. I'm somebody who starts a project and then goes off and does another project and then came back. So what I did was I actually built the body and the talons, and then gradually over many months did the feathers, because I would have lost the will to live if I'd done them from start to end. That's just not me. So then after finishing the Kingfisher, I decided, right, I needed to get on and actually finish the Kestrel. So I will be finishing, I hopefully, actually, by the next show that we do.
Oh, our next show is next weekend with
Yes.
with Jack, isn't it?
Yes. Jack.
Draws
Portraits.
portraits, yeah, he draws your pets. So let's rewind a bit, because before I go around and show everybody, all our watchers, all our viewers, our visitors to our show, your wonderful creations, let's think a little bit more about needle felting and how you do it, because it's not, you can't just pick a bit of wool and make this, can you? Yeah, there's a lot more involved than that.
No, and also that's obviously a much more advanced project. And like this, for instance, that I'm actually starting at the moment, will be a lion.
Oh yes, this is the. See, I never know. You come down from your upstairs cave, as I call it, and you bring down what looks like some Egyptian god in the making.
And a lot of them look quite similar until we start doing the muscles. Because here I'm just starting to define some of the muscles in there, whereas on the other side is a bit.
You know, I hate them at this stage.
Yeah, I know you do.
They do. They just look so weird. But this is going to be a lion, yeah.
But it's going to be a lion.
But not any lion.
No. Our wonderful friend, Ashley Vincent, photographer. I said, I'm doing a lion, and then I saw his photographs of the wonderful Milo.
The Barbary lion.
Yes, a Barbary
lion, which are now extinct in the wild.
Yeah. But Milo, beautiful, and a face which definitely shows a lot of the life that he's lived.
If I've got technology correct now and I'm doing it right, you should be seeing on your screen now a picture of a Barbary lion.
Yeah.
If I've got it wrong, you'll still see a picture of Steph holding this Egyptian whatever. But
basically what is in here is a wire armature, and by armature I mean skeleton. So I download the skeleton from the internet. From practically every animal known to man, there is a skeleton up on the internet. I download it, decide what size I'm going to do, print it out, and then I just basically trace it with wire so that I've got a basic skeleton, and then start wrapping the wool around. And then I start needle felting by adding the muscles and everything. As I say, just starting to sort out the back leg and the muscles here. So that's what I'll do. I'll get all the muscles and the face and everything, and then I'll put the fur on.
So I'm going to ask one of the questions now that I know you get asked an awful lot when we do shows, is what's in the middle of there? Is the polystyrene?
No. As I say, it's all wool apart from the wire, and some of the makes won't even have wire in. So, in fact, the puffin, the only bit of wire there is his feet, because he's a nice big bulk. The rest of it, he doesn't have wire in. It's only really when you're doing thin legs.
And you can actually manipulate them then.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's only when you went thin legs, and then you stack. So obviously the horse.
Yeah, we'll have a closer look at the horse later on. But
the horse, obviously very thin legs, and and from the hair point of view, it's nice to be able to manipulate.
And again, that's not just any horses; it's an Arabian.
Yes, it's an Arabian.
Right, we'll have a look at that later on.
I like to think a wild Arabian.
A wild Arabian. Yeah. Right. Okay, so back to basics then.
So basically, no, you can get kits which have got polystyrene in, and my advice to anybody who has one of those kits is they're brilliant value for money, but don't use the polystyrene. Get yourself some core wool, which is just basically washed wool which has been vaguely processed.
I've just heard they've just opened the doors of the show, so in a minute you'll be able to hear the crowd arriving. So
you might have to speak up.
There'll be some people coming around to watch you live. He said with his fingers crossed.
So I would always suggest you get yourself some core wool, and if you've got inside your kit there's a polystyrene egg or something, I would suggest you just very quickly needle felt yourself an egg shape.
And throw away the polystyrene.
Yeah, throw away the polystyrene. Now, one thing I do say, lots of people struggle when they first start to get that solid centre inside their needle felting. So a really good technique is to actually take a piece of wool. Notice, very scruffy piece of wool. This is just my...
Just washed fleece?
Yeah, washed fleece, and in fact probably remnants that I've then carded together.
But you can just buy core wool, can't you?
Yeah, you can buy core wool. And core wool is just basically sheep's wool which has been washed and carded once, twice, but it's had the least amount done, so it's the cheapest, and that's the only reason it's called cord.
Carding is when you do what?
So you've got the drum carder, which has got the bed of wire, and basically all that does is makes all the wool go all over the place, so you don't actually have straight. When you have slithers, which is what people will take when they're going to weave it and on the wheel, it all has to go in one direction. To felt quicker, you have to have the wool going in all different directions, and carding's brilliant for that, for actually turning it into this. But anyway, take a nice big thing. To make it nice solid, just tie a little knot in the centre, and then you've got a nice little cord, and then you can just wrap around, and with one little stab I can just keep that lot together.
So why is that all staying together when you use... I'm going to come around here, actually. I'm not going to try and be a BBC cameraman when you don't know what I'm moving, so it's better lighting around here.
A needle felting needle has got little barbs. I'm just flicking them.
Trying to get it really...
Might be difficult.
Oh yeah, I can just about see.
Just about see the little barbs. Which
oh yeah,
are down.
yeah.
All wool, by its nature, if you put it under a microscope, which you won't be able to see on that camera, has actually got scales on it. Just by stabbing, see what I have to put up with? This needle with barbs into the wool, it makes those scales lock together. But by doing it a little bit to start with, it's just easily tacked together, and I can actually easily pull that apart. The more I stab that, the smaller and smaller it will go, and then you won't be able to pull it apart. The equivalent of putting your jumper in the washing machine too hot, so it shrinks, and then you can't pull it apart. Eventually you can get it that. But it's dry felting rather than wet felting.
So how long has that been known that this happens then? I mean, is it something recent?
Well, wet felting has been going on since the Egyptians' time. We've had wet felting around. But actual needle felting, the dry felting, is more of an industrial process. So the 100% wool that you have flat was made, and still is made, from beds of these. These are the exact needles which come out of those beds, which just stamp down into the wool.
And that makes you your flat pieces of felt? All right.
So I think it was the 1980s, a group of ladies went round one of those plants and asked if they could take some of the needles away to see if that basically they could sculpt with it. And that's when needle felting, as in sculpting,
for craft people was born.
But as I say, needle felting, as in felt, which has been processed via a needle, has been around since the industrial process existed. But actual fibre sculpting is more like the 1980s. So quite recent.
So you've got your core bit there in the middle. That's where you start for most of your projects.
Yeah. So
with a core that you can felt into.
You would normally, as I say, when you start off, most kits will start with a particular shape. It could be an egg shape, or even just a ball shape. But as I say, get yourself that shape rather than a polystyrene. People often ask how hard or soft should it be. Do you know, it's up to you. Because I've got some things here, like my fish, which are really squishy.
Oh, the mad fish.
Yeah, mad fish, really, really squishy. You know, not very much felting gone on there at all, as opposed to the horse who's sculpted rock solid. Because obviously, in order to get the sculpting done, it's rock solid. Depends what effect it is, depends what you actually want to do with the piece yourself. Can you overfelt? You can, but it takes an awful lot. But if I'm doing something where I'm adding lots of layers, I tend not to overfelt to start with, because every time I add another layer on, I'm going to be felting it in, so it pretty much does a good job of felting all the way down. So that's how you always start, and then basically, depending on the pattern or whatever you're doing, you create your piece.
So do you create all individual bits first, then put them together, or do you? It depends what you're working on.
So it depends what you're actually doing. So obviously, if I'm doing something like this, then I've actually got the wire through.
It's a hair, yeah.
Yeah, hair. There actually will be two boxing hairs.
Let me get this in. Oh yeah.
I do it all in one piece. Some people, even when they do something this size, will still do the individual limbs and add them. Once again, it's a personal kind of process that It's like anything, you need to try both lots and decide what's good for you. I just prefer to always know overall, because I always start with that skeleton and I'm always referring to that skeleton to make sure I've got it all in proportion, rather than doing a leg and then adding it and thinking, oh no, now I've got to make some adjustments. So that's my process. There's no such thing as a right or wrong way of doing it. You just decide what's right for you.
So beginners can start with kits.
Yes. So there are so many kits around which are brilliant. The kits that, if you've seen me at a show that I sell, are the Crafty Kit Company up in Scotland. Brilliant. They do everything from the little birds right up to a hare and a fox, which have got armatures in them, and they've even added lovely beehives and little doggies, the little Scotty doggies and things that we took to the last show. So I always say go to them direct if you want to do it online, because they're all set up for sending out, and I think if you buy 2 it's free postage. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But the Crafty Kit Company, go to them direct, but they do brilliant kits. Lots of other people do kits. The Makers, where I went down and did my course, they do kits. Another lady who I love to watch her tutorials online, The Wishing Shed, she does some beautiful little pieces. The little cats, do you remember the little cats? Yeah, that was
Sleepy
lovely.
cats.
So that was lovely.
So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you round the stand, show you some of Steph's creations, and hopefully find a nice piece of gentle music to put under, so you haven't got to put up with our voices for a few minutes, give you a bit of a break from our voices while I take you around the stand and show you some of the wonderful needle-felted sculptures by Two Teak Boutique, Stephanie Lester. So that's it. You've had a little look now at the wonderful creations that Steph does, needle felting, and yeah, awesome, I think. But of course, you do commissions as well, don't you? So if people want anything commissioned,
yes, I do. I don't take on lots of commissions because I like to do a nice mixture of my own creations as well as commissions. And in fact, I'm doing at the moment a lovely little Jack Russell called Milo. Who I had at the last show, if you came to the show. Hopefully be finishing him off quite soon so that we can get him to his home. But yeah.
So these could be of treasured pets that sadly have passed away, or
the important thing is the photos on that, obviously. I can only get detail that I can see from a photo, and what I always say is send as many as possible. Obviously, the ideal situation would be that you actually had I'm going to use Pedro as an example here, like if you actually had a picture front on, side, back, and any other way, and in the stance that you actually want the sculpture to be, that's ideal. But as many as possible, because I like to try and get to know the character of the I see in the animal, and that's what I can produce. It's my interpretation, which is why when I do commissions, I don't take a deposit. I take on the commission, I tell you when I'm going to start, and then I will send you some pictures. I obviously will have told you how much it will be, and then when I've finished and I send you pictures, then I ask you to pay before I actually send it to you, because it's my interpretation.
There's no obligation,
no.
Is there?
It's my interpretation of your pet, and if I haven't captured what you see, I don't want you to feel obliged to actually buy that sculpture. I will still keep the sculpture and sell it. Obviously not as your pet, but as that particular breed of cat or...
So basically you hold the pet to ransom then, don't you? That's basically what you're doing, isn't it? If you don't buy it, somebody else will buy your pet. That's a great idea. Great marketing.
Ransom on the animal.
Ransom on the animal on the stand. So we're gonna move now. Sorry. We're going to move now from needle felting to what you touched upon earlier on, which was your critters. And this is how I think I first remembered you starting doing animals. Is
the very first one was the hedgehog.
The hedgehog, yeah. And then you, with the benefit of the courses that Lainey does up in Telford, you produce these wonderful. Now, just to make it clear, these are artisan bears. They're not toys.
No, none of these are toys. They can't possibly be. They are sculptures or collector's items. But no, and the reason why these can never be toys is because they don't actually have, safety eyes. They actually have proper sockets and things on them, and they have little pieces which will get into little children's throats and things.
And they're full of shot.
And yes, there's lead shot in there as well.
Yeah,
so,
not exactly the safest thing to give a 2-year-old to play with.
So no, absolutely they are collector's items, just to get that.
And they're already posable, you've got all the joints and...
Yeah, every single one of them has actually got joints, heads. In fact, I haven't got one here, but I did actually have a polar bear and a grizzly bear who actually had a double jointed.
Polar bear was my favourite.
Yeah. I love grizzly.
Yeah, I didn't want you to sell the polar bear, but so these are made in a very different way, aren't they?
Yeah. So basically, they're often there's a pattern which will be cut out of usually mohair, sometimes alpaca. This is mohair. This one's alpaca. I'll go on to a little one in a minute. But yeah, basically they're patterns, and then you give them every time you make one, it's different. It's like when you go on Lainey's courses, everyone has the same pattern and they all look completely different at the end, as you will attest to, because we always have a picture of them at the end. And you can always tell your own because you give your own character. I often do needle felted bits and pieces on mine. And then, say, Lainey taught us how to actually make her own patterns and how to adapt the patterns that she's given to us. So, it's a brilliant course to actually do that on.
And this is Pedro, isn't it?
This is Pedro. This is Pedro number 3.
I know. I love Pedro.
I know. We actually had a blue long-haired version of Pedro. We decided it was a bit wild, but he was very popular.
Very popular, yeah.
This is my particular favourite, which, as we often talk about, something which is my favourite.
Geraldine.
Is often not the favourite, of
No.
people who come to the show. And what's quite interesting is Emma, who's also a needle felter. This is also her favourite. So perhaps it's just needle felter. So
Yeah, probably is.
I don't know, but I find him particularly sweet. And
But this is the first time now that you've actually moved on to doing a critter pet.
I know.
This is unusual, isn't it?
Yes. So basically, for the first time, one of my collectors asked me to do her beloved Angus. Now, interestingly, I very first met Zoe because Angus had actually wrecked one of her beloved childhood toys, which was actually a stiff squirrel. And then I ended up doing her another squirrel and put the stiff squirrel inside. But we were told right from the start that even though Angus had destroyed this beloved toy, Angus can do no wrong.
So the stiff squirrel became a Steph squirrel.
Yes, basically.
Stuffed with the stiff squirrel.
Stuffed with a stiff squirrel.
This is down to Delia Smith territory now, isn't it?
Yeah, and then she asked me if I could produce a critter, which is Angus. And Angus is a Tibetan Terrier. I've got a little needle out at the moment because I'm still playing around with where his little bottom jaw's going to be.
He's cute, isn't he? He's
the lovely
gorgeous.
thing about-
Now, I've seen the photographs that Zoe sent you of Angus, and I can attest to the fact that that is such a brilliant representation of him.
He is a gorgeous little boy,
Yeah.
Angus. So hopefully he'll be finished quite soon and be at home with Zoe. I've sent Zoe pictures of him so far, so we decided what to do with his mouth.
So that's one that definitely won't be held to ransom.
Oh, no, Angus will be going
To a good home.
Yes, indeed he will. So that's the first time I've ever done that. So yeah, actually done a commission of a...
So if you fancy your pet in needle felted form, Steph can do it. You fancy it in critter form, i.e. an artisan bear form, then there's a chance that you can do that as well.
There's a chance.
And also heads.
Oh yeah.
Shakespeare, look at that. Because we're from Stratford-upon-Avon, you wouldn't think it, would you? And we're in Stratford now, obviously, broadcasting from Stratford, and that is the epitome of Stratford-upon-Avon.
The head I'm doing at the moment, which is one of my personal favourites, is Frida Kahlo.
Oh yes, Frida Kahlo.
Yeah, a very distinct, obviously, face.
Monobrow.
And the flowers in the hair. I've been sort of almost doing it for quite some time. In fact, we realised I haven't been very productive in the last
No, you
couple
haven't
of
really,
months.
yeah.
I need to pull my finger
Yes.
out, basically.
And of course, my present last year, my birthday present last year,
Oh, yeah.
was my sporting hero, the great, the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali. There he is, and that was just an amazing needle. And again, that's all wool, solid wool. There's no middle to it. There's just wool all the way through. So yeah, so there we are. So you've now had a look at what Steph does, and there's lots of it. So if you fancy finding out more, then you can drop us a line, message us online, or tutique.co.uk, Tutique Instagram. Is that right?
Yeah, Instagram is Tutique Boutique.
Tutique Boutique
And
Instagram.
the Facebook page is Tutique.
Tutique, and it's tutique.co.uk is the website,
Yeah.
where you can buy what you want. You can chat to Steph.
Come on and have a look and a chat.
Enough about you.
Yeah.
Do you want to know about my lamps?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
give it a go. Okay, so this is over to you.
Right. So yeah, my lamps. As Steph said earlier on, this came from the fact that when we first started doing the shows, we wanted some extra lighting on the stand. A lot of shows provide you with lighting, but a few extra lights. So I said, yeah, I'll make a few odd lamps, a few different lamps. And it started off, there was a couple of bottle lamps, I think, and a couple of book lamps. And they were okay, they sort of served the purpose. But I've always got a bit of a creative mind, and I started to look on Pinterest, Instagram, see what other people were doing in other parts of the world as regards lighting. And I came across pipe lamps, this sort of steampunk era that we're now in, which is a combination of Victorian industrial meets modern fantasy stroke sci-fi, that sort of thing. I knew that would happen.
Excuse the phone.
rings. I'm going to just turn that off. Don't go, where were we? Yeah, so I found this idea of steampunk lamps, these pipe lamps, and looked around and saw there wasn't many people in the United Kingdom doing these. And I wondered why, and the reason is, A, there's not the availability of these fittings. Now Steph is going to focus in on these fittings now, I hope, of some description, one of these. You can see these are all galvanised malleable iron pipe fittings. This used to be what was used for gas pipes, for water pipes in the UK back in the Victorian times and the turn of the 20th century. Nowadays, of course, we've moved over to push fit, to copper, that sort of thing, which doesn't lend itself so well to making these style of lamps. So I found some suppliers in the UK that could supply me with these. Now, in other parts of the world, like the USA, Russia and the other Baltic countries, they still use a lot of this. In fact, some of it is they always use this malleable iron fitting material for their pipes, so it's freely available. We haven't got that benefit here in the UK, so I have to hunt around for it. And I started to realise that you could put together these pieces, and they come in various sizes depending on the thread size, and you can put together to make different lamps. And this is what I've started to do. It started off quite simple. One of my earliest ones was the Fisherman up there. You see it sat on the shelf there. That was one where I decided to use the flexible kitchen tap hose that you would have in your sink, combining that with the pipe fittings to make a Fisherman. And the wonderful thing is these bulbs that I use are all filament bulbs. They're the Edison, reproduction Edison filament bulbs. How bulbs used to look way back in the early days. And they come in a variety of filament shapes, the spirals, the vertical, one called a squirrel cage. So these are all a boon to people making lamps like I do now. So starting off with that, I then developed different techniques. Well, one thing I try and do is to incorporate the switch in the lamp somewhere where you wouldn't expect it. Anybody can put a torpedo switch, one of those inline switches on the end of a cable, but I try and incorporate the switch in somewhere a bit different. This is one of my cheeky range, I call it, the Cheeky Chappy. We had a few of these, but they sold quite well. This is Cheeky Chappy the Gymnast. I'll leave you to do any interpretation you want to where the switch is. The switch is quite prominently just here. And so incorporating the switch somewhere a little bit different allows people to have a bit of fun. And these make great cheeky gifts for people. My biggest piece so far, my most ambitious piece, without doubt, is this Easy Rider bike. I'd always wanted to make a motorcycle out of pipe fittings. And as I say, the switch there is where you would normally press to start the motorbike up. There is the switch. So I was able to use both the larger 1.5" diameter pipe right down to the 1/8 of an inch diameter pipe here. So this took me a heck of a long time to make, I can tell you. But I'm very pleased with the result. And you can see if you look around the stand, as Chef will show you in a minute, Steph will show you in a minute, we'll go around the stand. There's nothing really that I can't depict in lamp form. This is the Pipe Walker, the Jedi, who's one of my recent creations to coincide with the whole Star Wars thing. And for those rock singers amongst you, we've got Roger the Rock Singer, inspired by listening to Roger Daltrey from The Who, singing "Who Are You" on the radio. I thought, yeah, I could make Roger, and there he is with his mic stand at the side. And now this is where we combined forces here, because I wanted something that looked like a microphone, the old-fashioned microphone top. And guess what?
I needle felted it.
It's needle felted. So there we are. So anything you want to ask me, Steph, about these lamps?
Okay.
Shut up for a minute.
Well,
Stop me sometimes.
No, the thing that people always ask you is, did you used to be a gas fitter?
No. That is the question. People say, did you used to be a plumber, a gas fitter? No, my whole career has been in horticulture. I'm a gardener by trade, spent years and years designing people's gardens and putting creativity with plants. So it was a surprise to me when I found that I had the same level of creativity, I think, to make lamps. And these are all pat tested. I taught myself to pat test with a pat testing machine. So all these are perfectly safe. And the good thing is, because they're all metal, you'd think that would be a safety issue. It's actually, when it comes to pat testing and making sure they're all earthed, it's a bonus, because the whole thing is automatically earthed. So these are all safe. They all carry a CE mark. I keep records of how I make them all. So, but they are a bit of fun. Now, apart from doing the pipe lamps, I also love repurposing old vintage items that I find. And if we walk over to this part of the stand here, you'll find this is the vintage lamp area. And one of my favourites to do are these. Now these are the old British Telecom, when in their early days they were the GPO, the General Post Office. We know them today as British Telecom, and they used to have these were the bell boxes. And the idea was, those of you that were wealthy had one of these in your house, and you were able to wind the handle at the side, and the magneto inside would start to turn, create a current that would then ring a bell in a different part of the house where there was another box like this. Coming out of the side of here would have been the telephone handset, and you would wind, you would alter the position of the switch on here, which you'll notice now turns the light on and off. But you would put it to either to speak to the exchange down the road, so you would wind this up and give me Stratford 247, 3 numbers in those days, all there was. And it's what the great joy to me is to see children when they come on our stand at the show look at this and me try and explain to them what it is. It's an original telephone box, and you can't get the internet on it, you can't play games on it, it doesn't do WhatsApp, but it was the original way of making phone calls to the exchange or to different parts of your house.
They don't even know what an exchange is.
They don't even know what an exchange is, no. And other things that I tend to do, this is a hand sprayer, a lovely little brass hand sprayer I used to use for the garden. Again, the switch is now what you are pumped up and down to pressurise the sprayer to spray the water out of the end here, which I've converted into a lamp. And just to finish off, one of my most popular ones, which a lot of people, you see a lot of people doing these, this is the blowtorch, the vintage blowtorch. And again, where you used to pump up and down for the sprayer, to spray the paraffin up into the flame, that is now the switch. But again, my wiring goes right through the middle of the brass paraffin container and up that tiny tube in the middle. Most of these you'll see people have put the wires around the edge. I like to make it more difficult for myself. But I think at the end of the day, you do what you want to do to make your crafting as interesting as possible to both you and for the people that are going to buy your works. So that's enough from me. Unless you've got any more questions, which you can email, you can drop us a line.
Do you take commissions?
Oh, I take commissions, yes, thank you, my marketing girl there. I do take commissions. People usually have someone in their family for which they think a lamp would be perfect present, particularly the pipe lamps, and that person has got a particular interest. It could be archery, I did Hawkeye the Archer, it could be a train, it could be anything, and a golfer, tennis player. There's really nothing that I couldn't do a representation of in pipes and the wonderful Edison lamps. So get in touch if you've got a birthday coming up for somebody, special birthday, you want to give them a very special present to light up their life.
Oh.
So let's have a closer look at some of my creations. So there you have it. The crowds are just leaving, and that's the end of our show day here. It's been lovely for you to join us. Thank you very much.
Been great fun.
Been great fun. I think I was brilliant.
You always think you're brilliant.
I know. So please join us again next time. In a couple of, next weekend, we'll be posting online about what you can see, and we'll have some new creations to show you then. So in the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, stay indoors, and have a lovely, relaxing weekend. For both of us, goodbye.
Goodbye.